Exclamation, everybody, and welcome to my thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West. As you can see, the credits are rolling, and we've just finished the main story. I am still going to do the DLC, but I thought it'd be nice to kind of give my thoughts about the main story, because I have a feeling the DLC is not going to change a whole lot as far as these thoughts go. So I've played for about 120 hours. I think it's just over 120 hours. I think ultimately it's about 85 to 90% of the game I've done. I did not finish all the. There was one side quest left, which was the Enduring, which is a very rough battle. I didn't finish the arena, and I didn't finish the all the hunting grounds, because frankly it just got to a point where I like the hunting grounds. I like the hunting grounds from the first game too, but it's gotten to a point where it's just there's just too much, and I just need to move on. So I guess first and foremost, would I recommend this to anyone who wants to play the game? Yes. However, I would say you owe it to yourself to play Horizon Zero Dawn first, because while this game does have a good story, and it does try to at least give you a roundup of what happened in the first game, you really do, in order to fully appreciate everything going on in this game, you really do need the context of the first game. I say. So definitely finish and play and pick up Horizon Zero Dawn first, and then do this game, because you'll appreciate it a lot more. I think. The story in this game is good. The main story is very well written. Some of the dialogue when it comes to the main story, just like in the first game, was very good. But unlike the first game, some of the side content dialogue, and some of the asides that you get at your main base and stuff, kind of amateurish, not very good. There was a lot of repetition. It feels like there was a limitation in their dialogue system where they didn't know what dialogue options you were going to pick first, so they made sure that every dialogue option retread the same ground that a previous one does in the menu, instead of actually putting some extra conditionals in there to say, like, okay, we've already talked about this, we don't need to retread this ground again. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have that. And that a little bit of that happened in the first game. In this game, it looks like this game really shines through, or shows through, I should say. It's not a very good look. There's a lot of times you'll get into a dialogue with an NPC and you'll just get pulled completely out of the game, because you get tired of talking to them. I didn't exhaust all the dialogue options, because you just kind of you get the gist of it and then you move on, basically, as far as I can tell. The world and the graphics and the art are even more beautiful than the first game, which is quite a feat. As you can see here, it's just an absolutely gorgeous game. The music in this is also really good, although it has a lot more influence, it feels like, from other sci-fi things. There's almost like a little bit of a Blade Runner vibe in there at times, and things like that, which is good. It's just kind of a little bit jarring, because I didn't get that sense from the first game, and then this one, it's kind of really leaning into it. But it's still very good. Still very good stuff. It does, however, get pretty old. Like, they don't they really have like two battle themes, and you'll hear those two battle themes throughout the entire game, which is not unlike any other RPG, honestly. But I was kind of, for a game of this length, you kind of need more than like two themes, really, honestly. I feel like, which kind of leads me into one of my, I think my biggest complaints about the game is that it's kind of ballooning at the seams. It feels very much like the first game, Horizon Zero Dawn, was very focused. The gameplay and the narrative and the side quests were all very, very focused. And I assume that was due to the fact that they were also developing the engine at the same time, and they just didn't have the time to really flesh too much out, so they just kind of kept it very slim and to the point. And I think that was a good thing. In this game, it feels like very much like nothing was left on the cutting room floor. And under normal circumstances, if everything was fantastic, that would be okay. But really, there's a lot of this game that just should have been cut out. Because at times it just kind of it meanders quite a bit. You can sort of, run through just the main quests pretty quickly, and there's a lot of side quests that you don't have to do. But even then, it just kind of artificially extends itself to a point where it just kind of gets very old very quickly. And to be honest, there's just a ton of stuff in this game that really should have just not be there. There's a lot of activities, a lot of open world activities. Like, for instance, there's a mini game called Machine Strike, which is the Gwent, if you will, of this game, except it's not anywhere any good. It's probably one of the worst mini games I've ever experienced, and I'm not alone in that. I actually looked online, and most people agree that Machine Strike in this game is the worst thing they've ever played. In fact, most people don't even bother playing it, and I went through and did all of it, because there is a cheese out there that you can do that just kind of lets you basically go through all the things pretty quickly. And I did that mostly because it gives you rewards, skill points and stuff, and I really wanted to just try to complete as many skill trees as I can. And this game does have skill trees like the first one. You can't, doesn't look like you can complete the skill trees, at least in the first playthrough, but there is a new game plus, so at that point you would probably complete them. I was able to complete 4 out of the 6 skill trees entirely, and that was with doing all the Machine Strike stuff and all the side quests and whatnot. But they Machine Strike is just the worst thing ever. It should not even be in the game. And it should not have rewards tied to it that make you kind of want to even attempt it, to be honest. Secondly, they have, and I'm guessing this was due to feedback from the first game, they've leaned very heavily into melee combat. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't think they've ever really done melee combat well. They didn't do it well in the first game, and it's really sucks in this game too. Like, it doesn't feel fluid. It doesn't feel like, one of the things they have in the game are melee pits where you go in and they try to teach you all these moves. You have these move sets that you can do, and you spend half your time trying to pull off the moves that it's telling you to, but it'll just tell you didn't do it right, or you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, and you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and then eventually you get it right. But then at that point, when it comes to actually using it in a battle, it's 50-50 whether or not the move will actually work for you or not. It's pretty bad. And honestly, it's not as satisfying as just shooting machines with bows and arrows. I mean, like, you gotta be honest, there's just some satisfaction with just taking down this giant machine with nothing more than a bow and arrow, as versus using melee strikes and stuff. And honestly, most of the machines, especially on the very hard difficulty like I'm playing here, won't even let you get close to them anyway. If you do, you get stomped on pretty quickly. So it feels weird. It feels like they left the machine AI the way it was from the first game, where getting into melee range was a suicide pact, and they left that alone, and then they added all these melee things that just don't seem to work. So I don't know what they were thinking. I think they thought, oh, more people wanted to do melee stuff, and they wanted to try to fix that, and they did the opposite of fixing it. They made it worse in many ways. And then on top of that, you have the melee pits, which are, I mean, let's be honest, they're not great. The final battles that you have to do in the melee pits to unlock the secret boss, if you want to call it that, were just horribly unbalanced, and I ended up just cheesing them. It turns out you can just put traps in the arena before you and then start the battle, and then the traps will go off, and that'll give you at least some advantage in the battle. So I did that because the problem is the game has a lot of these battles that just sound fun on paper, but when you play them just aren't. It's one thing to be challenging, it's another thing entirely to be so challenging as to not be fun. Like, you can be challenging to a point where you actually suck the fun out of the game, and many of those kind of side quests and side battles are that way. They just suck the fun out of it, because you're not, when you get done a battle, one of the fun things I've always liked about the Horizon series is, for most battles, if you fail, you come out of it and you go, okay, I know what I did wrong, I know what I need to do to fix this. And then you come back and you maybe do it one or two more times and you finally succeed. But then they've injected more of these battles where it's just like, you just throw your hands up in disgust, because you're just like, what am I supposed to do differently? And that's where the challenge gets to be not fun, right? They've added more weapons to the game. They've added Tron-like weapons and stuff, and it's like, okay, fine. It's still technically in the universe, but a lot of them require so much finesse and so much, trial and error to use, that it just, just give me bow and arrow. That's all I use for most of the game, was the bow and arrow, because it is the most fun to use. And it's like, why would I want to do anything else besides that? And the first game was very similar in that regard too. I just, I feel like, for a game like this, the first game was about 100 hours to do all the stuff. And having this one be 120 to 130 hours to do all the stuff really felt bad. It doesn't... This could have easily been cut down in half. This could have easily been an 80-hour game, and it would have been fantastic because the pacing would have been just right. The pacing in this is off, and furthermore, it feels like, again, as I said, it's bursting at the seams here. They shoved in additional storylines that could have themselves been another game, right? So the only way I could talk about this is to give slight spoilers here, but we learn about the ultimate. We learn that there are other things besides Zero Dawn that were discussed and were executed to try to save the human race, right? Which is great. It's great to see that. However, in the midst of everything else going on with the Zeniths and all that stuff, we got more information about Ted Faro and what happened to him, and we see his ultimate fate, which, on the one hand, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting story, but the payoff is terrible and not earned, and it felt like it was just a shortcut. Like somebody just said, look, we just got to get Ted Faro out of the picture. Here's what happened to him. And that was it. And honestly, they were getting to a point where he was actually pretty interesting because they introduced the Quen into this, who kind of worship Ted Faro kind of thing. And they managed to make a lot of interesting stuff about like what happened to him, what made him go off the deep end, what happened after he went off the deep end, and all that stuff. What was his idea for saving the human race? That could have easily been like an entire other storyline. Like they could have, like there was enough there they could have done it, and it would have been a very interesting storyline too. But instead, they just kind of shoved it in here. Sort of haphazardly, and then just said, okay, here's 2 missions and then done. And it's like, it just felt weird. Even like the Quen and stuff felt like they were just kind of shoved in there. It would have been interesting to introduce them. But I don't even think you needed to introduce them in this game. I feel like you could have talked about them. You could have maybe had a representative that you found, like a scout or something, and just kind of lead into that, and that could have been its own game entirely. And honestly, the main story, I gotta be completely clear here. The ending of the main story, as good as it is, feels like it's suffering from Mass Effect 3 syndrome, or actually really, I guess, Mass Effect syndrome, right? Where every Mass Effect game, the first game was like, oh, it's, the human race is at stake. And then the second game is, oh, well, the solar system's at stake. And then the third game's like, the entire known universe is at stake. Like they kept upping the ante to the point where it got effing ridiculous, right? Like you get to a point where it's just like you can't go any higher without magic, right? And it's supposed to be sci-fi, and that's what they did here at the end. They're like, you know what, magic, we got an even bigger world crazy event than the ones we just introduced, that are going to destroy the world. And it's like, stop one-upping yourself. Like, you don't need to do that. There are so many good storylines that you could go down, and you introduced, and you could take to fruition. The third game could have been us learning about Ted Faro's ultimate fate. Like maybe there was something going on where he's causing problems with the world and stuff. Like it just, they've raised the stakes to the point where I don't think, if there is ever a third game in the series, and that's a big if, because I feel like they've raised the bar to a point where even they don't know how to write themselves out of it. I don't think I'd want to play it for the story, at least. Maybe for the gameplay, but not necessarily for the story. Because it's gonna, like, it's giving me like Mass Effect 3 vibes, where I loved Mass Effect 2 and I loved Mass Effect 1, and I refuse to play Mass Effect 3. I loved Mass Effect Andromeda even, and I refused to play Mass Effect 3 because it was just too effing ridiculous from a story perspective. And I knew it would just piss me off, and I would just stop halfway through. And I feel like that's where they've gone with this, and it's just, it pains me to no end to see that, because it's just such a amateurish writing mistake to make, where you're just constantly one-upping yourself and one-upping yourself and one-upping yourself until eventually, you know, you're just pulling random stuff out of the air that doesn't make any damn bit of sense. And that's kind of where they've gone with it, and it's unfortunate, because the story of this game is really good, and they had a really good thing, and then right at the end they do a kind of a rug pull, kind of, sorta, that ends up just, if you take more than 5 minutes to think about it, it hurts your brain, right? It's completely, it's like they built these characters up and then went completely out of character, right? At the very end there. I think in their quest to make every character gray and not be just evil for evil's sake, right? They went to a place where it's just, you're just like, well, you lost me, you know, you just lost me there, right? It's like, it's okay to have an evil enemy that is just plain evil. You know, you can give them motivations, you can give them reasons why they're doing things, and they did a very good job of that. But you don't have to then say, well, turns out they were being evil because they're afraid of the prime evil that's coming after them. You know, it's like, oh, come on, guys, really? You know, like, it's just bad. It's just bad. Everything else was so good, and that was just so bad. And then, I mean, there's like, the first game had problems with climbing. They made it worse, you know, climbing mountains and stuff. They made it 1,000% worse in this game. Like, the climbing in this game is, someone, I assume on the dev team, played Assassin's Creed Unity and said, oh, you know how it took you 25 years just to climb straight up one of those towers in Assassin's Creed Unity because they had switchbacks and everything else in there? What if we made every single mountain in this game that way? And it's like, you get to a point where it's just like, I just want to get to this point. I don't want to climb this mountain. I just want to get here, and there's no way to do it without running 20 miles one way and 20 miles back the other way. And it's just, you know, and then they wait till the very end of the game to give you a flying mount. And once you finally get the flying mount, it's like, it's so much nicer to traverse the world. Like, to give players an open world, and technically it's a semi-open world because it doesn't open up on its own. You have to play some of the main story to open it up. And then make it like ridiculously hard to traverse that world is just, or make it not hard, but make it annoying as hell to traverse that world, is just the wrong way to go about things. And then on top of all that, because it's an automatic grab, you know, you don't have to press a button to grab onto the rock walls and stuff. Many times you're fighting enemies and you've got your camera pointing at the enemy, right? And you're fighting them, and then all of a sudden, unbeknownst to you, behind the camera there is a mountain slope, and Aloy will just latch right onto it, and then you're hitting C to get her to let go, and she won't let go, and it's you end up dying half the time just because there was the battlefields that had stuff in them that Aloy just latched onto, like it was a freaking magnet. And it's just that you get those annoying, really, really annoying deaths that shouldn't be happening, because they should have just made the climbing thing require you to press a button, boom, done. It's that just sort of really works on your nerves after a while in the game. But I mean, the combat in general, still very good. Still very good combat. The arrows and the bow and arrows are still very good. All the machines that we had from the first game make a comeback, along with a few new ones. They kind of nerfed... Well, actually, they really did nerf the stealth in this game, which is a little bit annoying. Even against human enemies, they nerfed the stealth, because they made it so that you can't always instantly kill something with stealth, even when you're fully upgraded, which is kind of terrible. I mean, I can understand that with the machines, but with the humans, that was a bad choice, a bad, change that they made. And then second of all, they made a lot of humans wear helmets that end up taking 20 25 shots just to knock their helmet off, just so you can do some half decent damage to them, and shoot them in the head and everything. So they made all that more difficult for no good reason. And yeah, the stealth, it just it gets to the point where it's just not worth doing stealth anymore in the game. The overrides, you still get overrides from cauldrons, but not directly. You get the ability to unlock the overrides, but then you have to then fight those machines, get certain parts, and then bring those parts back to your base, and then build the override for the machine that you want. So again, something that was a very good thing that helped you with a lot of stealthy missions, and allowed you to basically do the whole game in stealth if you wanted to, they removed for no good reason. And so if you really like the stealth in the first game, you're going to really hate it in this game. I really enjoyed the stealth mechanics, but then I got to a point in here where it's just like, there's no reason to do it. Even with human enemies, they got to a point where you couldn't take out any human enemies in one shot, and they would just alert everybody around them anyway as soon as you tried to do it. So it was like, there was no point. It was just go up to an outpost, shoot the first person you see, and just deal with the consequences, which is kind of annoying, because it really I really like that part of it, and they nerfed the hell out of it in this game, and that's unfortunate. Very unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, overall, my negative about the game is that they really should have cut a lot of stuff out. They put way too much stuff in here, and both from a story perspective and from a world perspective, as far as side content to do. Their side quests are, some were interesting and some were just kind of very, very bland. They do bring back some characters from the first game, and they do them dirty. They do them dirty. They don't. None of the characters that come back from the first game have any growth in this game. None whatsoever. They introduce new characters in this game, and even those new characters kind of stop growing at some point, with the exception maybe of Beta and Alva, probably. I mean, those were the two, I'd say, that still had some growth happening. towards the end of the game. But all the other characters that they introduced, that you sit around in your base and all that stuff, like, two-dimensional. They don't flesh them out anymore. They could have. I mean, even Talana from the first game comes in, does a cameo in this game, and grows by the end of it. Like, she does, you have a few missions with her, side missions with her. You learn more about her. She grows as a character, and it's great. But, poor Erend, like, he is literally just comic relief and nothing more. Like, they really wasted him in this game. Like, there is literally a side quest where you're trying to find the headquarters of the rebels in this game, and you literally tell Erend, because they're Osram rebels, and you tell them, okay, go hit up your Osram contacts and figure out where this base is. And he's like, sure, I'll go do that. And then, meantime, you go and find out all the information about where the base is, and then you come back to Erend, and you're like, hey, I found out where the headquarters is. He's like, oh, that's cool. I don't have any additional information to give you about that. It's like, you had one job, dude, and you did nothing. You didn't help. And it's just it feels like there was either a last minute edit or something happened there where they just kind of forgot to have your NPCs do anything useful. And speaking of having them doing anything useful, on the missions where you're dragging them along behind you, good golly, do they not shut up. Not only do they not shut up, but they will, like, rag on you, like, oh, we're gonna go now. We're gonna go now. No, we're waiting for the patrol to leave so that I can go to the next cover. Shut the hell up. I don't know what they were thinking. There was some disconnect somewhere along the way, and they just ran with it, and they probably ran out of time to fix it properly, or thought there wasn't anything wrong with it in the first place. But it's just weird. You have all these characters and you care not a thing about them. And yeah, a little bit of a spoiler, they do kill a character off from the first game. And let me tell you, it was supposed to be a really sad event, but no, I was quite happy to have one less person yapping in my ear as I'm trying to do stuff. It's just one less person hanging around doing things. And furthermore, that particular person that they kill off, you never see them doing anything. You're told, oh, while you were gone, they helped with this, or while you were gone, they were doing that, or while you were gone, they were helping this, they were talking to Beta and helping Beta. Like, you never see them do anything. Every time you're there, they're just sitting at the bar, just chatting, like, you're told all their deeds. You never see any of their deeds. So they never grow throughout the entire game. It's the same with the other characters. They don't grow. You get introduced to them, the new characters, you get introduced to them. You get a little bit of background information on the tribe they're a part of. And then that's it. They're forever that same character. They never grow even one little bit. Even when you do their side quests that they specifically have, they come out of them as though you did nothing. And that's just bad RPG writing, right? Like, that's, if you're going to introduce NPCs that are going to be recurring characters that are going to be at your base doing things, and you're going to give them missions that are specific to them to make them grow, and then not have them actually grow, that's just bad writing. But I say all this because I love this series and I love this story. But I do feel like this game kind of asks this game has kind of a tall order, right? It kind of asks you to put up with a lot of filler to get that story, to get those good things, and then it asks you to ignore some glaring failures and failings and stuff. All of which is just unfortunate. I wish they had kept it to like an 80-hour game and left stuff on the cutting room floor. I just wish they had cut stuff out of this. I feel like a lot of the stuff they put in here was stuff they probably cut out of the first game. And by cutting it out of the first game, they made a better game for it. And by putting it in here, they just kind of, I don't know, they just extended the game without really giving you much that's interesting. Not every game has to be 120 hours. I know that there's a large group of gamers out there that judge a game by how much money they spent per hour playing it, but it's, there's a lot of good small games too, and as I said with the story here, they merged a lot of, it felt like they merged a lot of storylines into this one and then resolved those storylines in a very unsatisfying way, just to get them out of the way, like that, just to get more content. And it's like, you guys could have, like, there was so much more there you could have worked on. There's so much more there. You could have made this. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on, and you just kind of shortcutted it. But anyway, that was a very long 37-minute rant on the game, because I love this game. I love this series, and I like to see it do well. But as I said at the jump, I would still, despite all the flaws, I would still recommend it to anybody. Of course, make sure you play the first game first, because you'll get this game better then. But that's my thoughts on Horizon Zero Dawn's, or Horizon Forbidden West's main storyline. Thank you so much for watching.